on Waiting for the Encore. My guest is Kelly Green. Kelly is a lifelong musician who grew up touring with her father. As co-founder of the Texas KGB, now known as Madame Radar, she has established herself not only as a fantastic vocalist, but as a killer performer and monster guitar player. I mean, she shreds. She's super down to earth and easy to talk to, so please enjoy my chat with Kelly Green.
Kelly Green, thank you for being here with me today. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So let's get right into it here. How have you, and you can include your roommates, which I think are also your bandmates, and that being the former Texas KGB and the current Madame Radar, how have you and your bandmates and life mates been doing through the coronavirus so far? And why don't we go back to mid-March, when all this started, and kind of tell us what you guys were doing and what you were planning and how that all got shot to shit, as it did for everybody.
Yeah. Well, lately it's been great, but starting off in March, it definitely was really scary and uncomfortable. And, we had tours planned for the United States and we were working on European stuff. We just had a new album come out and we were doing a lot of promotion for that. So everything just kind of got cut off right as soon as we let our album out, it was like everything canceled. So that was kind of a big bummer, and we were kind of not sure what to do. But what's cool about being together is that you have five brains constantly coming up with ideas. So we were able to just sit around and go, okay, well, what can we do? And live streams were the natural answer to that question. We started doing a Saturday night stream, like every Saturday. Now I think it's been like 21 or 22 weeks worth of live streams. But we really got to see what kind of fan base we have grown over the years, because we've had so much support and consistent support that it's actually been a blessing in disguise. We are changing the outlook on how we want to handle our business going forward. And I think, obviously it's a terrible time for so many people being sick and out of work. And but we found a little bit of light in the darkness. So I'm thankful for the time.
Well, that's good to hear. And I could probably say the same thing. I mean, it's definitely a shitty situation, but myself, and it definitely sounds like you guys, and I want to talk more about those Saturday nights and what you guys have been up to a little later too. But, I've been able to find kind of a similar thing. It's like the first month or two, you're like, well, what the hell am I going to do here? Piecemeal some things together. And then sure enough, you get these new epiphanies, and it's been somewhat of a blessing in disguise, or glass half full, any way you want to do it. But I'm glad that's the way it's been for you guys as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And so you guys were planning going touring, how you're going to hit the US, and you were even going to get over to Europe as well.
Yeah, our new album came out. We spent more money than we'd spent on any project before, and it turned out really great. We worked with Steve Christensen, who helped Towns Van Zandt win a Grammy on I think it was called Towns album. But it was it was cool to work with people that had just worked with some of my heroes before. We worked with the Band of Heathens to record it. Gordy Quist was our producer on the album, and it was just a really cool experience, and it turned out really, really great. And now it's just kind of like, I mean, we're still selling copies and stuff, but it would have been so much, I guess, more exciting to take the music on the road and really share it with people in its entirety. So,
well, I can attest to that. It does sound great. I've listened to it, and congratulations on it. It does sound fantastic. You guys should be real proud of it.
Yeah, you never know how it turns out. I've hated some of our other albums, where I can't listen to them afterwards, but we actually popped it on the other day just to, listen to it. We weren't doing anything. I was like, man, this is a great album.
It is. You guys did a great job. And I want to get into that a little bit later as well, and some of the specifics about the sound and all that stuff. But you mentioned you have five people. Now I know there's four in the band. So is the fifth person a manager or someone behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's our bass player, Violet Leah. It's her boyfriend, Dan Ryan. He's in a band called Crowbot, and they're very successful. And it's kind of been a bummer for him because they had a hit on Billboard charts. I think they reached top 10, and they were touring with Metallica and all these really cool, Kiss, and just all these cool people. And then it just all dropped out for them also. So Dan has been helping us run sound on our Saturday night shows, and we've done a little bit of licensing work since we haven't been touring as much, which has been another cool outlet to really kind of start to dive into. That's something I've always wanted to do. But he's really helped put together the sound and the visuals for our show. and he plays drums with us every once in a while, so that's cool.
Well, that's great. What kind of licensing have you guys been able to delve into?
Yeah, we've been working with CBS, so they have like a new show coming up. We just signed the paperwork, and they used some of our original songs, and then we recorded a cover of "You've Got a Friend" by Carole King. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Are they using it on kind of a general basis for like promotion and commercials, or specific television shows they're going to use it in?
The specific episodes, yeah, like the
Awesome.
"You've Got a Friend" thing is at the end of like these people adopting a dog from like the about kind of rescuing dogs, and there's some of our original songs which I never would have thought they would have used them in this way, but we have this kind of happy summertime song called "Carolina" that they're using during like a protest scene, and then another song they're using during like a jail fight, some kind of like prison scene. So the way they chose to use our music was really unique and interesting.
Well, congratulations with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
licensing is always an exciting thing. I've had little stuff here and there, nothing on the CBS level, but it's something especially at the beginning of this lockdown, I was looking into that field a lot and kind of trying to research it more. And I've looked into it before, and it can be a tough nut to crack. So congratulations on
Yeah, yeah,
getting through that hurdle.
we got lucky, they just kind of reached out to us, so it was like, oh yeah, but like if there's any time to get started on this, let's do it. We have nothing else going on.
That's fantastic. Good job.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
why don't we go back even further? I'd love to hear kind of about your roots, where you come from. I think I know you come from South Carolina. Is that correct? Or Georgia?
Georgia, yeah.
Georgia, sure.
Yeah, it
Sorry.
was a no, it's
And yeah, tell me about your early years, how you got started in music. Obviously, you're an incredible guitar player and singer. So you strike me as somebody who got into it early. But why don't you tell me where it all comes from?
Yeah, I was actually born in Florida. We only lived there briefly because my dad's a musician, and Atlanta was a really kind of happening place in the 90s, early 90s. So I think it was like 93 or something. He moved us up to basically like an hour north of Atlanta. They bought a chunk of land, and my brother was just a baby. I was 3 going on 4, and we basically we lived in a tent for like a year and a half while my dad like built roads because it was the middle of nowhere. So they had to build roads, build wells, get electricity out there. And we lived in the woods for 16 years where it was just, you have to like boil water if you want to take a hot shower kind of thing. It was a really unique way to grow up. But the cool thing, because of that, music was a huge part of my life because there wasn't anything else to do. So it's like my dad would be touring and gone all the time, but there's all this music year round. So my brother was like 6 years old. He got a well, actually he got a guitar, but I took it because I wanted to be a guitar player. So he ended up moving to drums, and we would just play all day long. And my dad had a little studio set up, and so we would just record and play, and we did that for years. And we kind of started to get good. My brother started a band, and kind of like a prog rock thing, and I was super jealous, and I really wanted to play music out too, but I was too nervous. I had really bad anxiety when it came to performing live. But I ended up meeting a friend that was kind of couldn't do it on herself by herself, and I couldn't do it by myself. So we joined forces. And my brother ended up being in our band, and we toured around for a few years in Atlanta, had a really great time. And the whole time I was kind of like watching my dad's career and being like, man, he was doing bigger things than what I was doing. And when I turned 21, I went on the road with him. And that's really where I learned like about being a musician and traveling and what it takes to run a band like a business. So it was kind of like this just long process of, being a hillbilly, having the time to play around, and then, just following my dad's footsteps.
That is super exceptional, unique upbringing.
It's
So
weird.
I just want to get into some of that stuff a little bit more because that's so much cool stuff there. So you were living in the woods, and for those 16 years, you
Yeah.
were boiling water for showers all those years?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
Wow.
after a while, we ended up putting like a water heater and stuff in. But I remember, you know, just not having like our electricity was ran on generators, so you can only use so much. I remember when we finally got like an air conditioner and got real electricity, and all of those things. Like I remember getting like a computer for the first time, and I know computers back then were still kind of like new to having in every household, but it was still like it definitely was different than the way my friends were raised.
And what kind of music was your pops playing?
Rock and roll. My dad's kind of like Stevie Ray Vaughan meets Ted Nugent meets Gene Simmons. Like if you just took those three people and smashed them into
Those are
one guy, and I'm
some
not
big
playing, that is like
That's a lot
that
of
is my
personality
dad.
in that sandwich. Wow.
Oh man, my dad is extreme.
Is he still doing it?
Yeah, right now he's playing with Waylon Jennings' grandson, Way Jennings.
Wow.
But he used to play with David Allan Coe, who's an asshole. I don't like David at all, but
Hmm.
no offense, David. He had a really, he had an interesting career. He had some incredible songs and then really some terrible songs. But my dad played with him for a while just because it was, he was able to live his dream and play his guitar in front of thousands of people. So he did that for a while and was just like, this guy sucks.
Hmm.
So, but that was, it was interesting to see like what you do for music and what you do to like, meet connections and to be able just to like get a little slice of that next step, So
That's
yeah, I don't
wow.
know. I
Very
love my
wow.
dad and I respect
That's
his
great.
career.
That's fantastic. So how old were you when you started playing guitar? I didn't catch that number.
Yeah, I was also 6 years old.
You were 6. Wow. So young. So young.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And
Yeah, I started on acoustic.
when you were obviously you were probably just, learning what you could for those early years. And I'm sure your dad was, if your dad is doing it, he's probably the apple of your eye for those many years. And what age did you start kind of picking a style? Because you are a true slayer. I mean, you're a guitar slayer. I mean, so I'd like to know who those early influences were that kind of perked your interest.
Yeah.
And were like, oh wow, I want to do that. I want to do that.
Yeah. Well, obviously my dad was a huge inspiration and he was always into like rock and roll. So I grew up like Kiss is one of my all-time favorite bands. I mention them a lot, which is funny because some people think they're kind of like a makeup costume band, which they absolutely were. They are. But they also have like if you ever listen to their Unplugged album, you realize like their musicianship and how strong the harmonies were and the melodies and just I don't know. I really appreciate their musicianship. So I love that band. But a big band for me as far as inspiration was Grand Funk Railroad.
Mhm.
I'm a huge fan of Mark Farner. And I love the power trio thing. I thought that was so cool that they could come up with that much sound. But yeah, I'm into bands with a lot of lead guitars and harmonies, like things like the Eagles and obviously Fleetwood Mac. Our band gets compared to them a lot, I think, because the men and women in the band, not so much the sound, but I mean sometimes the sound. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And so what did the teen years look like for you in terms of the music? Were you mentioned you started getting into a band, and then were you playing in bands all through your years? Was it always something that was present for you, or was it kind of on and off kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, from the time I was 6 to like 16, well, I guess I was 6 to like 12 or so, where I was really dedicated. And then from like 12 to 16, it kind of fell off a little bit. And at 16, I picked it back up and was like, I'm doing this for the rest of my life. Um, but I don't know, it was kind of, you get really excited about it, then you hit a plateau, and then you kind of have to make that commitment to yourself to go, am I going to push, past this, or is this just kind of where I'm going to be and I'll pick it up whenever? And it took me a minute to go, like, how far do I really want to take this? Because I felt content just being a rhythm guitar player, just playing acoustic behind people for a long time, because it was really fun, and I enjoyed being, you know, I enjoyed letting someone else shine, where I could just, you know, help be a part of something. I love being a teammate, and I love, I'm like a good Robin to a Batman. But then, I was on the road with my dad, and we were in a band that was a really, really, we were hard workers. We would drive from like New York to New Mexico to California out to Pennsylvania. And there was never like a good, like, tour set up. It was just kind of wherever we were needed, we would go. And we worked hard for 2 years where it was just constant, nonstop, grueling. And it was me. I was the youngest person in the band, and like 6 other men that I traveled with. They were all 30 and older. Something. One of the guys was like in his 60s. So it was an interesting dynamic, but it became really hard. And keeping that many men happy at the same time is, challenging, because they're all grumpy old men, and they miss their families, and you never get into music if you want to make money. That was something my dad told me at a young age. So it was one of those, we were definitely struggling at points, but we were doing what we wanted to do. So, it's that weird, like you have a bad night, but you had a bad night playing your guitar. So how bad was it kind of thing. But I remember one night in particular, my dad was just in a kind of a really bad mood, I guess, and was just kind of like ready to do something else. And we played a song, and someone ended up messing up really bad on stage, and he got so frustrated he just walked off. And I'd never seen that before. And at this point, I knew like three little kind of riffs, lead kind of riffs. And I was like, well, there goes our lead guitar player. What do I do? And everyone looked at me like, well, are you going to step up or what? And I was like, okay. So I played those three riffs in like every key that I knew, I was like, okay, here we go again. I'll just hold this one note for this entire song if it sounds cool. But that night was a pinnacle point of my career where it was like, it was either step up or don't. And I chose to step up. And from then on, I was like, I'm a lead guitar player. Let's do this.
Well, I'm glad that happened, because now we have Kelly Green, the lead guitar player, in all her glory. So I'm glad that your dad was pissed on that night. But so you said you were in your young 20s when that was going on, because that's an intense dynamic, and you kind of hinted on it.
Yeah.
And we don't need to delve more into the intensity of it because it's pretty obvious. But I mean, I've been on the road extensively, usually almost always with two other people, which is as manageable as it gets for the most part. So
Yeah.
to just get a taste of that intensity and then put yourself in the shoes of a, kind of no pun intended, but a green younger woman with all those
Oh,
grown
yeah.
crotchety men, it must have been pretty intense.
It was, like I said, an interesting dynamic. But the thing
Yeah.
was, it was like, I almost look at that like, some people go to college, and that was my college. It was like, here's all these guys that they at different points of their career, they've all been very successful, or, signed to labels or doing whatever, roadies for famous people, whatever. And they joined together because they all had, a taste of the business. And I learned something from every single one of them. And I went and take it back. Jace, my husband, was also in the band. And it's kind of like we joke about it as being our boot camp, because we survived that so we can survive anything in the music business.
Was he, did you guys meet in the band, or did you join the band as a couple?
Funny enough, I actually, this goes back to my dad. My mom was running this restaurant in Jasper, Georgia, and my dad was a touring musician. He was gone a lot, and he was coming into town for like a month. He had a month off the tour. And my mom's like, I really want to start this open mic thing here. Would you set it up? Pass it off to somebody before you go. And he was like, yeah, sure, why not? I got a month to kill. It'll be fun. So our very first night doing the open mic, Jace, my husband, was the very first person that showed up. And I was 16 years old then, and he was probably 24, 25. He had fresh out of the Army, and
Wow.
he was just wanted to get some chops. So he came in and he played, and he like fell in love with my dad, musically. And he was like, man, do you want to start a band? And my dad like laughed in his face. Basically, he was like, yeah, kid, keep dreaming. But, years later, they ended up being in a band together. But there's pictures of myself, my brother, and Jace. I think I'm 15, 16, and my brother's like 13, 14, and then Jace, early 20s. So we all have these instruments, and we were like playing together then. And it's so wild now to look at those photos and think that we're all in a band together, 10, 15 years later.
That's really
Wild.
crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's very unusual. And I was just talking to the Waters, who are a couple, and
Yeah,
they
I love
have
the
a
Waters.
band, and their roots went way back as well, way back. But I think yours even way further back than theirs. I mean, well, they said they knew each other in kind of middle school, and maybe they did something in the middle there, but yeah, wow. So you guys, let's transition now to after, that band kind of fell apart, you said, after about a couple years. And from there, was it pretty much time to get it on in terms of starting your own thing up? Is that kind of when the
Yeah.
Texas KGB came into existence?
Yes, exactly. I remember it because shortly after the show where my dad had walked off stage because he was frustrated, you could tell things were kind of coming to an end. And all of these guys had been friends for a long time. So it was that weird, like they were ready to transition onto something else, but you have so much love and a brotherhood because when you're on the road together, you're family.
Yeah.
So it was this weird, like, I love you, but I just don't want to be around you anymore. It was kind of like a little divorce we were going through.
Right.
And we played this massive show in New York City it was like I think 10 years after 9/11 or something, maybe 11 years. But it was this big biker event that they did every year, and people would come in, and just kind of mourn. And I remember we had the worst show, and I was so embarrassed because it was such a important event, and the band just literally fell apart on stage. It was like one of those,
Wow.
just like, what, you just look around, you're like, is this happening? Like, is it,
Wow.
I was like in shock. It was like I was watching someone else fall apart in front of me, but I was like, wow, this is happening and I'm a part of it right now. That was our last show. And after that, it just kind of, we were, just kind of finished up a few of the remaining gigs that we had to finish up from contracts and stuff. And then we all parted ways. And that was from September to March. So, we still had quite a few commitments, but March hit and we came to Texas for South by. And that was the first time where it was like, okay, well, what do we do now? Do we start a new band? And Jason and I, we were together. We weren't married then. My brother wasn't quite in the picture yet. He was finishing college. So Jason and I roll into Austin and we're like, okay, well, what do we do? We booked this radio show with Roy Ibarra. It was at Opa. It was just like a little coffee shop South by show, but
I
it was
know Opa. Yeah, I know that place for sure.
yeah, but it was a worldwide radio cast. So
Wow.
it went, it was a good deal. So we ended up meeting a lot of people, and the guy that was hosting it was like, hey, this friend of mine, said if you need a place to stay, you can park your RV in front of our house. So for the week of South by, we stayed there. She let us shower and, fed us. And it was like, wow, this city's really great. So we're sitting in her driveway and we're like, you know what, let's call around to some RV parks and just see if we can play to stay. Because we had, I think, maybe $1,000 between like three of us. Still had our drummer from the previous band at the time. And we were like, okay, like, this is not going to last long. So we call around. I think on our fourth try, a guy picks up from Lake Travis RV Park, and he's like an old musician, and he like just really has the feels for our story. So he's like, yeah, man, just come play like a couple hours on every Sunday afternoon. You can stay as long as you want. And I think we were there from March until July. So it was a minute, but it
Oh,
started getting very hot. But every Sunday we would go, we'd play, people would bring us food, we'd have drink together, and we became like family with this little RV park. And that to me was like, wow, Austin really supports their musician. Like, what a community. I can't believe this. We were like able to make money, stay, and like save up enough to like get a house. And on our last day there in July, I remember we played our last show. Everyone knew it was our last show. And they brought us, once again, tons of food and drink and tipped us. And, we like cried with these people. It was like a moment. We had made this family, and then we moved on our way. But it was like, that to me is like one of those memories that was like, okay, this is why I'm here. That, music changes lives. Music keeps me going. And just to see how people responded to it, was something really special.
that's great. So what year was that? What year did you come to Austin?
I want to say I was 22 at the time. So I'm almost 30 now. I am 30 now. That was a lie. I'm 30.
It's a great age. You're
Okay.
entering the prime of life. I know it's taboo with girls age, but the future is bright. Trust me. I'm 36 and I feel like I'm just getting started. So it's all
Right?
perspective. But so it's been about 8 years in Austin then, is that right? Give or take?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Have you, before I go further into the story of the band and everything, just from what I've heard so far, have you ever in any way kind of chronicled the story that you've recounted, the early years and whether it's through blog or just typed or videos or anything like that? Because you've got a lot of good stuff there. It's a lot of
We
stories.
have uh, we have quite a few videos that we've been collecting over the years. Not always of, specific stories that stand out, but we have a lot of footage from the road, and we're kind of compiling it. And we've been going through it lately for our Saturday stream, and showing little bits of our time in the studio or bits of interviews that we did for promotions, or just our time on the road. So we're kind of getting to see it now, and it's been a few years to look back and go, wow, like look how green we were. We were such babies back then. And I don't know. I'm glad we've been filming this whole time.
Yeah, if you ever get some downtime, I would start writing down these memories you have, because there's a lot there. We don't have time to get into all of them, but I'm sure there's tons we haven't even touched on. But I wanted to I wanted to kind of go back to that the moment that you said you were kind of watching the things fall apart while they were falling apart, and just interested in
Yeah.
that because everyone's got their moments where if it's not on that level, it's pretty darn close, where it's like, what is happening? This is horrible, kind of thing. What exactly happened for that New York show you were talking about? Did people just start
Yeah,
yelling at each other or jumping up?
no, actually the audience had no clue what was going on. Like it
Okay.
was together enough that the show was going on, but basically what happened was we were using just whatever drum set that they had there, because it was, a lot of bands that day, and it was just easier to use the drum set. So, our drummer brings on his whatever stuff, but some of the cymbals start like falling off as we're like rocking out. And so he's looking over to our bass player, who's looking off the stage to call a friend of his up to come play like harmonica on a song, basically. So he's not paying attention. He's just like, hey, and we're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, in the middle of the show, like call him after the song, but he's not paying any attention. The drums are falling down. The drummer doesn't know what to do. So the guitar player, that's the singer at the time, is now walking over to help the drummer. And at the time, my dad and I were doing like back and forth leads and playing together. So we're just up there like rocking out, like, where did the band go? The bass player's not playing, the singer's not strumming, the drummer's like just using the kick drum, and it's just two guitars like wailing. And it was just like, what is happening? And it was just one of those moments where it was like, when you're in it and everyone's paying attention and grooving and everyone knows exactly what's going on. It's like we weren't having those shows anymore. It was like, you're distracted, you're doing whatever. And it just got to the point where there wasn't that gel anymore. I don't know how to describe it other than it wasn't easy.
Right.
The music
For
wasn't
sure.
easy. Like,
Yeah, I know
obviously the road life is never easy, but when the music doesn't feel like it just goes together, it's like, okay, like this isn't fun. When music isn't fun, it's really not fun.
Totally. And when the outside the stage things start to drift on the stage, then it's just like, all right. Yeah. Those moments they make us stronger, so it's all good. So as Texas KGB was coming into its formation there, when did Violet and when did your brother, when did they kind of come into the picture?
Yeah, so this is kind of the evolution of the Texas KGB. The last band was called Jason Lee. It was Jace, and then my father, Baby Lee, Jason Lee. After that band ended, it was the drummer, myself, and Jace. We were the original. It was just a trio: drums, rhythm guitar, lead guitar. Very interesting combination, but people were always like, you need a bass player, you need a bass player. So then we added the old bass player that we had from Jason Lee. He was like our utility player. He played piano, sometimes guitar, whatever. He came into our band, played bass. From there, it was like, okay, this is still too many members of this other band. It's still not really gelling. So boom, the bass player, he's out. Like, love you, see ya. So my dad comes in and plays bass. My dad's not a bass player. He's a lead guitar player. He was a very busy bass player. So once again, the dynamic was just really weird. And it just became almost like a competition between he and I, because he's such a showman. And I love my dad and his evolution of, of musicianship and like teammate-ness. I don't know what I'm looking for. I just make shit up as I go. But it was kind of like, I don't know. We were just butting heads. It wasn't working. So it was like, okay, he goes off and he needed to go be the lead of something. He's a fucking peacock. He's got to fly. So I know, right? So now it's back to the three of us. And it was kind of like when my dad was leaving, I kind of looked at the drummer and I was like, look, like we keep trying to make this work and something's still not really happening. And before my dad had finally left this last time, my brother came in, was playing tambourine and saxophone. And my brother went to school for saxophone, so he's phenomenal at it. But in his heart of hearts, since he was a child, he's been a drummer and he's freaking phenomenal. So it was kind of like, I think the drummer in our band knew at the time, like it was only so long before, he was going to kind of be kicked out of the band too.
Sure.
That finally happened. And then here we are again as a trio, Jace, myself, and my brother. And instead of using a drum set this time, my brother was on cajon for a long time. Just like another unique little combination, 2 guitars and cajon, sometimes saxophone. And we did that for a while. We added one more bass player in, another chick. And that happened for like 9 months. And it just didn't get that special feel. The three of us knew we were forever members, but it was like, we're missing our piece. There's something that's just, we need that other thing. What is that other thing? And so we decided, we're like, you know what, let's do what they do in the movies. Like, let's put out an ad and let's test some people out. Like, let's just see, let's not make any commitments. Let's just try some people. And so we made, we put an ad on like Facebook, just put out some feelers to musician friends we knew. And then as a joke, we put up an ad on Craigslist. And I think we got like 20, 25 responses. And we were like, okay, we were getting back to people. But one stuck out to me, and it was a response that we got from Craigslist. And I thought, we're being catfished. Like, there's no way this is right. It was this beautiful Asian American woman in her, late 20s, who's, been a teacher for music and has played in so many different bands and has like traveled all over the world. And we were like, okay, like this, like it's going to be like a 300-pound man who's just going to sit at another table and laugh at us when we show up. But we set up a meeting anyway, and we're like, okay. And there she is. And she's got this notebook and she's got all these questions. And we're like, okay, like maybe this is going to be weird. What's up? And her first question was, how do you feel about having an Asian in the band? And I was like, what? And I laughed so hard. I was like, okay, but she meant it, like, I guess some people are weird about race, and music. So she felt as like being an Asian woman, like, is this going to be hard for you to sell to whatever fans you may have? And I was like, no. So we did our first rehearsal, and it was instant. It was like, I think 3 songs in, she looked at me and she was like, hey, am I in the band or what? Like, yeah, you're in the band. We called everybody off. We're like, okay, we found our bass player. And that was 4 years ago.
Wow. Well, that's beautiful. And what's Violet's history? Is she from Texas, or is she?
Yeah, she's Texan through and through, and near Lubbock.
Awesome. So you guys got the band together. You got the unit you have today. And was it already called the Texas KGB, or is that when you stamped it the Texas KGB?
The Texas KGB, we came up with that name when we were doing, like, right before the Opus show. We kind of just established that name, and it stood for the Texas Kelly Green Band. I didn't really want the band to be named after me, so we did the initials because it was more of like a band type thing. I've always wanted to be in a band. I didn't want to be Kelly and the something. That was kind of like our compromise. I guess my husband picked that name. But when we moved forward with her after a couple of years, it was actually while we were in the studio for our latest album. Our producer was like, have you guys ever thought about changing the name? And it kind of sparked not an argument, but like a discussion, a very real discussion, where it was like, why would we change it when we've been established? So many people know us. Like, this name is like, we get hired because of this name now. But the other side was, from that trio to the 4-piece, back to the trio to the 4-piece to it was like, that was like a whole different life of music. And now we have this member that is very much a contributing member and in such an important part of the band. And to say that it's like, to pick out one member and go, here, it's your band, but everyone, we all sing, we all play, we all write. It just felt weird. So we finally came to the, conclusion that it's like, this kind of is a new band, even though we've been playing together as these members. The music has evolved, the image has evolved, and before we get too far into our career where it's like a bad idea to change the name, now is kind of the point. We have a new album coming out, and actually, because we changed the name, it took us another 6 to 8 months to get the album out, because we had to then work on, new logos and new photos, and so it really put a halt on what we were doing, which, you know how it is when you put something out, it's just like, okay, let's get it out. I'm ready to share this. And some of our fans, it was all fan sourced. We didn't set up a GoFundMe, but we had fans that came to us and went, I want to invest in you. What can I do? So now I'm telling all these people like, hey, sorry, you have to wait almost another year for this to come out, which was scary for me because I was worried that, people would be upset or whatever, but it was the opposite of that. Everyone thought, this is great, because they all felt like we were taking our careers seriously enough that, to make a decision that important. And but we came to the conclusion together, and we moved forward at United, and I think it was a really good move.
Yeah, man, it's always tricky. The whole branding thing is like, it's so important, it's so crucial. And the Texas KGB, I mean, that's a good name. It's got a catchiness to it. It's it's easy to remember, it's easy to say. It's got Texas in the title, it's got KGB, yeah. It stands for your name. But I mean, I totally get it. And I read that, I guess I didn't even think of this when I heard you guys were changing your name. I kind of figured what you explained about it, that okay, we're kind of have a new identity that we're trying to rebrand. I didn't even take into consideration the whole, I believe it said in your bio there was even some you know,
political. Yeah.
yeah, you didn't want to be perceived as an actual what have you.
Yeah. Well, one of the things when we were trying to book our first European tour that we ran into were some of the places were afraid to book us because they thought people
I
might
can
be
imagine.
offended.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was like, wow, I don't want to make being in the music business is already hard enough without making it harder on yourself for a name.
for
Like there
sure.
was a band called Wonder Bitch, but on the radio they kept getting their name edited, so it'd be like Wonder Burp, and people were confused by their name, and I believe they had to change their name too. So it was like, and that's slightly different circumstances, but it comes to that point where it's like, wow, is the name helping or hurting? In our case, it was not always hurting, but the times that it did hurt, it was like, oh damn, we lost out on that because of that. And the other part is after you decide, okay, we're going to change our name, but then you go, well, what are we going to call it? What's going to be better than this name that maybe some people didn't like the name before, but they have gotten used to it. So like what do you call it? And we actually did a last show as the Texas KGB, and we had like every fan ever showed up, and they were all rocking our merch and like sobbing, like people were crying, like we were killing something off that they loved. And that to me was like, oh shit, like this is beyond us now. This is not just us going, we're going to change this and we're moving forward. It's like there was a whole group of people that grew to love this over years, and then now we're like taking that away from them in a way. And even though it's just a rebrand and we're still going to be around, it's like they were really sad about it, and no one knew what the name was even after the last Texas KGB shows. They were like, what do I look for? How do I find you? And we didn't announce the name until we accepted our Black Fret grant at the Moody Theater. So it was like nobody knew for months what the band was actually going to be called. And when we announced it, we were really nervous because we were like, oh shit, like this is a lot of people to tell at once. Like, is this even a good name? I think we went through 600 different names before we landed on Madame Radar, and we finally just liked it because the balance and like all the options that it doesn't really mean anything. It's just a palindrome. Both words are palindromes. So it was like, okay, are people going to get this, or are they going to go, what is it? And it's like, well, it's us. That's what it is.
Well, it is a good name. And anyone who's been in a band, I think we have a few people out there who are confident in their ability to spin off what they would consider good band names. But in reality, we all know
Yeah.
how hard it is to do a band name. I mean,
Yeah.
it's tricky. It's just, you have to constantly Google, is there anything like that already? Has anybody called that
Oh yeah.
already? And it's like, I still do that with every song I put out. It's like,
Just does check.
yeah, I mean, because, well, first of all, for instance, in my situation, Sam Pace, okay, there is another Sam, well, there's probably a lot of other Sam Paces, but there is a Sam Pace. Pace is my middle name, and I chose it as my stage name like 10 years ago when I broke off from a band and was putting together the branding for my own career moving forward. And so I took Sam Pace. And so there's a woman named Sam Pace who's a DJ, okay, and she's in like New York. Now, she's been around pretty much as long as I've been around. And fortunately enough, she's a female, I'm a male. Our genres are
Yeah.
completely different. So there has never really been an issue, although there still are some, whatever you want to call it, intermittent, weaving of the Google things in
Yeah.
there. But, and then, so then when I came to Austin and put together a band, it was like, I wanted to be Sam Pace and something to kind of sever that off a bit.
Separate.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And then now, like, Sam Pace and the Gilded Grit was the band for years, and we had a strong
Yeah. I still
core.
listen to one of your albums. I don't know how many you put out, but I have one that around the house we listen to.
Cool. It had a core lineup for a good 5 or 6 years, and then it was great. I mean, I never needed a backup for 5 years, and we played a lot of
Yeah.
shows. But then that ended, and it transitioned into a situation where I was kind of I had like an A lineup, B lineup, C lineup, whatever. You know what I mean? And then it's like, well, do I go back to Sam Pace? Do I keep Sam Pace in the Gilded Grit? And for the time being, I'm just keeping Sam Pace in the Gilded Grit because, it is a solo writing thing. It's like I write the songs and I do most of the back end work, and I put together the branding. So it is pretty much my thing. But the rebranding thing is tough. And I admire you guys for taking that leap and doing it successfully. I imagine it's been successful. And I want to get into some of
It
your
was a good move.
yeah, some of your successes that I've seen you guys have over the last year or two since you've made that change. But it's tricky. You guys put your feet in the fire, and I'm glad it seems to be working out because it's tough. Everyone knows that kind of the branding thing is tough, and it's so important. You know, it's like for me, the way I've always, at least recently, is like 51%. There's only two things that are important in what we do if you're trying to be an original artist. 51% is you want to do your best to be the best you can be and put out the best original material you can possibly put out and put on the best show you can possibly put out. You know, make sure your product is as good as it can be. But the other 49% is the branding. You know, it's how much money can you make off this other 51%? You know, it's so important. So congratulations on doing it successfully. Now, since the Madam Radar has kind of taken the mantle, you guys put out this excellent album. Legs got chopped off like most of us for the coronavirus. And the one thing I've noticed is perhaps more successfully than anybody. And I think a lot of it has to do with the family aspect of what you guys do. I mean, you guys really, it really comes through that it's a family effort. Your husband's in the band, your brother's in the band, and your fourth piece fits right in like a glove. What you guys have been able to do since the lockdown, the corona situation, is these Saturday night things, which I see a lot of people live streaming. I've live streamed, a lot of people, and you guys seem to be more successful at it than almost anybody I've ever seen. So, you know, that's got to feel good. I mean, you guys are doing a show every Saturday with a full band. I see the numbers of people watching you. That's got to feel great. You guys are doing really good in that regard.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate. I have a lot of friends that I've been really feeling for, some of them that maybe don't play instruments themselves, that are just singers, so they don't have that comfort of sitting down unless, you know, their band sends them like a track to sing to, which for them is not always as fun as like being accompanied by somebody. Or bands, you know, I have friends that don't have the gear, even if they do have, you know, a beautiful voice and know how to play an instrument, they don't have the gear themselves to set up and go. And it's been lucky, like I said, to have 5 different brains all working and 5 different people that all have equipment and gear. So like the room I'm in right now is where we do our Saturday night shows. It's called the Radar Room. It's just a bedroom in our house that we've just converted. It's just, you know, there's just gear everywhere. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, to not have this, I can't imagine. And really what we've done now is, you know, we've turned the night into games, and we drink and we have a good time, and we just want to distract people and let them, you know, almost like a TV show where it's like, here's something new to look at. We do like little fun segues between themes of our show, and we, you know, we created an intro with our music, and it feels like a show. And lately we've started to get more serious with it, and we've set up not just marker boards, but boards with ideas, theme ideas, you know, whether it's like we're doing a Halloween special coming up, we're going to do a Christmas special and things like that, where it takes just a lot of planning to create enough content, or to, you know, go back through old content put together to present in a way that's going to be fun and make sense, and not, you know, people just go, oh, I want more music, you know, oh, just get to a song already. So it's like we're trying to find that level of, you know, how can I keep you entertained with just the originals we've had. We've been writing a ton of new songs, and then but every week we pick a few new songs to learn and play. And that's been also like a fun challenge that's kept me distracted, and also really kept me into, you know, playing every day, is just going, okay, you know, here's my homework for the week. Here's 6 new songs I have to have figured out by Saturday, and hope that I can remember it, because we'll probably pull it back out at some other point. I've like filled up, we all have our own little books, but I've filled up a book now with just songs that I've learned since I've been isolated. And that's like, you know, that's something that maybe I wouldn't have done before, because when we're playing so many shows, it's like, all right, here's we have it feels like an endless set list, because there's, you know, so many people that sing and so many people that write, but it gets to the point where you're like, okay, at any given point, you're like, oh, here's our go-to song. We know we can pull this one off well. And you just kind of almost get stuck in like little rotations of songs, like a radio or something, where it's like, okay, I will play this, we'll play this, we'll play this, and then you get bored of those, and then you'll add more in, and you'll play those and play those and play those, and then you know. And now it's like every week we're coming up with new content, and that has been so fun for me.
That's what it's all about. I mean, that you know, we've all been in those situations where it's like you write songs people like, you play the songs for the people, and then like everything else that gets old or repetitive, or even if it doesn't get old or repetitive, it doesn't fire you up. It doesn't give you that.
Yeah.
And when you're writing new stuff and you're performing it for people, those first few performances, those are
Are
those are
exhilarating.
the best ones, man. I mean, that's like, you feel the vulnerability, you feel the newness of it. You like players like us, we don't really worry about making mistakes because we've played so many shows. Any mistake we make is going to be whatever. These people don't even notice I'm making a mistake.
Yeah,
But
no, exactly.
when you're playing a new song, that doesn't hold true. It's like you're conscious of your mistakes. You want to perform it well. You probably forget lyrics, and then, but
Yeah.
it's all part of it. It's such a fun thing. So it's awesome to hear that that's what you guys are doing right now. Do all four of you guys live together?
So, no, basically we live in one apartment complex,
Okay.
which is another thing that I don't think other bands ever really think of is this is so much our career and so much what we want to do with ourselves that right before COVID hit, in March, my brother and I and Jace all lived in a house in Round Rock, and it was so great for being able to sit down and work up ideas and do all this. And then it was like, man, but Violet's way in South Austin. So we were like, you know what? Let's just move to her apartment complex. We can all have our own space and get together every day. So it's been, we're just right beside each other. So it's just like, hey, knock, knock, come in. So it's been, we've stayed isolated together, but we still all have our own little go-tos. So it's been perfect.
Good for you guys. And you guys are
Yeah.
right, as far as I can gather. And I've had, with all this time, a similar epiphany in the whole, what you're talking about with making a television show. I mean, I think you guys are right on the money with it. Not only are you executing it perfectly, but the idea in itself, that's the future. I mean, that's what the the podcasting that has taken over the whatever, it's a huge thing in entertainment now, and
Yeah.
YouTube. And it's like, now the legs have completely been chopped off of everything that the music industry, especially people that like us that are used to gigging, that love to gig, that make money gigging, that's all completely indefinitely out of the
Oh yeah.
equation.
As something I've learned about myself really recently, kind of like my own little epiphany is that, um, like I'm an artist, but I'm also very much a performer. Like performing is really
Definitely.
where I shine. Um, I'm getting better at my craft. So sitting down where you're being filmed and it's like, it's recorded forever, it gives you a different mindset versus when you're just playing freely and sharing an energy exchange with people in front of you. So it's a completely different, like being in the studio versus doing a live show, how they're such different animals.
Hmm.
This is very much almost like living in that studio world where maybe you're not like correcting any mistakes you make, but it's just like the way you approach it is so drastically different than a live performance. One of the other cool things about our live stream is that we've been really tapping into the other artist side of us because we all, like, I'm a painter. I do a lot of art. My husband makes clothes. My bass player crochets and stuff. So it's been this interesting way for us to really sit down and focus on our other talents. And then we've been doing auctions where we're making extra money that way, where we're going, hey, here's something that I've created myself. And we do like just kind of a thing. Whoever bids the most at the end of the night wins. And that has been both a challenge and really fun to do. And people have really seemed to enjoy it. And it's another way that they can connect with us and support us, but they get something out of it other than just, sitting down watching something.
That's big time. I mean, that's one thing that I've learned more and more about in the last 6 to 12 months is exactly what you just described, is having these other things, not only to share, but to sell. I mean, as artists, we're pure at heart. We want to focus on the art. We want to deliver something, not necessarily asking for something in return. But
Yeah.
the fact is, we got to make some money doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And why not make as much as we can make, especially if it's coming from, if we're making it and providing people who want to buy stuff. And I have a good friend who's for I guess lack of a better term, he's a fitness guru and does all his stuff online. And that's one thing he told me is like, every video I do, I'm selling a shirt. Everything I do, I'm selling this. I think it's a little harder for us to be as extreme about that, but it's pretty crucial. I mean, so you guys should definitely keep going that way, because I'm sure it'll provide a ton of extra income and fun for you guys to
Yeah,
create that way.
it's been a good another resource that's been really helpful and beneficial to us.
And I'm not just blowing smoke up your backside when I say I haven't seen anybody on any level of the music thing be as consistent and successful in a COVID lockdown presentation, a
I think
musician's
I
presentation.
appreciate that. We've checked out a lot of live streams from all varying levels, and it's definitely, I think it's just a hard thing to accomplish. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
such a new world, and
Mm-hmm.
I really contributed to just the fact there's so many minds in one area, and we are so like-minded. Like during our day, we all work out together, we play together at night, so it's become such a team goal that I think that's, you know, what has benefited us the most is just everyone pushing forward in one direction, going, this is what we want to do. And we have a lot of really cool things that we're trying to work on to, you know, keep improving and getting better. But I appreciate you for saying that. Thank you.
That's a beautiful thing. I'm happy for you guys. Just a couple more questions. So
Yeah.
before I was broke off and did my solo thing from the end of my, well, kind of the beginning of the end of my college career to when I basically was in Chicago, I was in a band for 4 years, and it was a band, and we had, to start, it was a co-writing, co-lead situation. So it was me and another guy who also played lead guitar and also wrote, and it was very, you know, two people do it. And then we added a third person who also wanted to write, and we did some great work together, but it was challenging. And we found that the reason we just broke up amicably, because the music was just going in too many different directions, and you know, it was still, we were still doing a lot of good stuff, but it just, you know, I'm just curious how you guys are able to make it work. Do you guys have a formula that you stick to, or is it more laid back, or is it like, okay, it's 1-to-1 kind of, we got to each get our art in here?
So it's interesting. It's a very interesting dynamic. I've never been a part of anything like this. We're all very good at sharing, and one thing that we all enjoy is variety. So people, you know, we've talked to people that have, you know, wanted to either sign us or manage us or whatever it may be, and they all come to the conclusion that they don't know what to do with us because our music is so varied. You know, Jace might sing a country song, Violet might sing a pop soul song, I might throw some southern rock your way, and it's like, where do you put that on a label? Where do you put that in a record store? People don't know. So for me, I'm like, most of what is promised as a record deal, or, you know, what anyone can promise you, is probably not more than what I can do myself, or they're going to take such a big chunk of it, it's not going to be worth me or my teammates. So we've come to the conclusion that it's like, what we do is not easy to sell, and it may not be cool for people to sell, but the people that come to our shows love the variety so much that they can bring almost anybody with them and know, okay, maybe you don't like this song, maybe you don't like that song, but you're going to love this next one. And that usually hooks people enough where they go, oh, wait, I like that. And then they start to go, oh, well, okay, maybe I don't like that style of music, but, you know, now I kind of have an invested interest in this band because I like that other song. And we've picked up people that maybe wouldn't have ever listened to a country song that now love because we don't sound country, but we have a country flair. We don't sound like this. And that's the other thing, is when you really start playing and writing together, even if someone brings something from one side of an extreme to the other, you're still playing it together, so somehow it still sounds cohesive. But lately we've been trying to write more songs that are band oriented, like things that we can all sing at the same time, or things where it's like, you get a line, you get a line, you get a line, and make it more band like.
Mm-hmm.
Because before, when we first started, it was like, here's all the songs that I've written over the last 10 years, let's play those, and you do the same thing, you do the same thing, so as you sing, you sing, you sing, and we just rotate through. Or we'd write a show based off of like the mood, where he's like, you might sing 3 in a row, but it might need to be that way for the dynamics of the evening. But now it's like, yeah, let's write more band oriented songs, because a lot of people don't do that. Maybe they can't. Maybe some people, you know, we have a singing drummer that plays saxophone. It's like that is such a unique combination to have. So I don't know. It's just like, we like to let it just be whatever it wants to be.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, genres are a tricky thing. I mean, that's one thing you hear again and again. And most people have some leniency on it, but for the most part, the people who are trying to push a product, it's just easier for them to
Yeah.
put you in a box. And that's cliche, of course. But, when I'm promoting a single or promoting or whatever, and you go through any list of things where it has these genres, some of these genres, I can't believe there's genres there's some of the most ridiculous names for genres these
Yeah.
days. And to think that a band can actually fit into we're Zoomcore or we're whatever, it's like, what
Yeah.
is that? It's like shoegaze, glamcore, or what have you. I'm like, how are you writing more than 3 songs that sound in that?
Like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I have the same problem. Just as an individual, I draw on different sounds, and my writing process is when songs start, I don't sit, and I'm sure you guys are the same. I don't sit down and say, I'm going to write a country song, I'm going to write a blues song, I'm going
Yeah.
to write a rock
No.
and roll song.
Just
It
let it
just
happen.
comes. It just comes. So you guys are keep doing what you're doing, because it's a special thing. You definitely have that family thing going for you guys, and it's palpable. So just to close it out, you kind of touched on some of this stuff already, but what do you guys have planned for the 4, 6, 8, 12 months coming up here?
Yeah, so we've decided finally that we're just going to take the rest of the year off,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like we don't really know what's happening, but we do
You mean
have
from live
um
shows,
yeah, just
like,
we're
yeah.
proper live shows. We're just like, no, we're going to take the time the rest of the year just to work on our live stream and to continue to write music. Our last album, as great as it was, is like, it kind of got stomped in the ground as far as, really promoting and touring on it. So we're like, you know what, that's a great starter album for us. It gives us something to promote and to sell what we want to do in the future. But as of now, we're just focusing on writing new music for new material and just to continue to tweak our image and the branding, just to make it really refined and make it what we honestly want. But past that, it's like, just keep on living, try to stay healthy, and keep sane.
Sounds great, Kelly. Kelly Green, thank you so much for being with me today. I wish you
Thank you,
and
Sam.
Madam Radar the best of luck. And as I'm telling other people as I'm doing these, I'm hoping to do this indefinitely. So hopefully we can catch up on some new excitement, whether it's a year from now or 2 years from now or what have you. But you
Awesome.
guys keep up the good work.
Thanks, man.
Okay, Kelly. Take care.
Thanks, man. Take care. Bye.